crosses out, checker flag. That's a fine. Awesome drive, man. Awesome drive.
It's nice to close out a race like that. That was awesome.
This is the Team Blaney Podcast.
Welcome, everyone, to a special bonus episode, video episode of the Team Blaney Podcast. My name is Adam Rogers, and alongside me, as always, is co-host Steve Mez. Steve, we talked during the day, decided we needed to get something together because we had a little bit of breaking news this Thursday, August 25th, leading into the weekend of the Daytona Coke Zero Sugar 400 that had some huge impacts on the NASCAR playoff standings, the race for the championship, the eligibility of drivers, and something that in the end will benefit Ryan Blaney and Martin Truex Jr. But first and foremost, we do have to say our thoughts are with Kurt Busch in his continued recovery from the concussion-like symptoms that he's been dealing with the last several weeks. And due to those symptoms and due to his continued recovery, 2311 Racing and Kurt Busch announced on Thursday that they were going to waive the medical waiver that was given to the team and Kurt Busch earlier this season after he hopped out of the car due to an injury sustained at Pocono. And because of that, two more positions, or at least one additional position, is up for grabs of the NASCAR Cup Series playoff standings as they go into this cutoff race at Daytona. So, Steve, it was definitely a day of kind of mixed feelings, good and bad. And overall, I'm still nervous.
The big thing for Kurt is that now he can heal and on his own timetable, not push anything, not try to push the doctors into something. It's bad because it came down to that, but in reality, he's got to take care of himself first and foremost. And, it's a scary thing because sometimes somebody gets a concussion and it goes away in a week. Sometimes it takes a lot longer, and he's not a younger guy. So healing could take him a little longer, and I'd rather see him just heal. I'd rather see him be better, feel better, be himself, return to himself. And, don't try to, it used to be that, guys would try to hurry up and get back in the car so that nobody knew that anything was wrong. And there's a lot of horror stories about guys who don't even remember racing for a couple of weeks, because they had a concussion and didn't even know they had one. So, I'm just thankful that they came to the good decision. That's more about his health than anything else. Yes, it changed everything today. And once again, the Team Blaney podcast records on a Tuesday night to put it out Wednesday. And sure enough, big news comes out in the day or two following. This time around, if you go back and listen to this week's podcast on the Team Mez takeover,
It was.
We did actually talk about some scenarios. And the reason we did is I'd heard some murmurs from other podcasts. I'll credit Jeff Gluck on the teardown, that they talked about the fact that NASCAR was looking at what to do with this scenario this week. And it's only, like Kurt even said more or less in his statement, that it's only fair to the people around him and the other drivers. And I think NASCAR felt the same way. So we did discuss it on the podcast and had a little bit of a premonition that something might be happening. And sure enough, it was today, this morning, about 10 o'clock this morning. I've never really had my phone blow up like that before, except for like a weather warning thing that's come across the phone,
Yep.
Where you got a tornado warning or something in your area. This was really crazy, because the announcement was right around 10 o'clock, and you texted me and my wife texted me, and I got other texts, and I got a message from Josh about it. And, everybody was letting me in on what was going on. And I was out doing some delivery work, and I have Apple CarPlay, so I could, get the texts and messages and stuff, but I had to stop, pull over and read what the heck would happen. And this really, it changes things to some extent this weekend, but it takes a little bit of pressure off at least, and changes the game plan for sure.
Yeah, and you kind of mentioned it as well, but what a classy move by Kurt Busch 2311 Racing, the 45 team, to do this before the race at Daytona. They could have easily not done it at all, or they could have waited till after the race was over. It really would have put NASCAR in an awkward position, especially if the race was already over, kind of taking Kurt out and then putting somebody else in after, the competition was already held. Really, really classy move to do this beforehand. They could have easily just kept stringing it along and, hope that maybe he can get back into the car, because I think his waiver would have lasted into the first round. Yeah. So where he could have just come back for the last race of the first round and hope to win it to continue on. But they went ahead and announced this beforehand. Classy move by that team. And it's like I was saying, it's major implications for the playoff race. Major implications for the 12 team and the 19 team. I mentioned right at the top that I'm still nervous, though, because even with 2 places up for grabs here as they head into the Coke Zero Sugar 400, there's still no guarantee that Ryan Blaney makes the playoffs, and that's what makes me nervous. I talked to you a little bit before we got on here, and I was trying to do an order of importance on the scenarios that we have going here, or the goals maybe for the 12 team. And I kind of wrote them down in my notebook here. And I think goal number 1 is strategy number 1 is the race to get into the playoffs. Mm-hmm. I think that's most important. The second thing is the race for the win. You want to win at Daytona. He's the defending race winner here in this race last year. And third, which we'll talk about with your, I think your points big board, is the race for second as well. Because there's only 9 points that separate Kyle Larson and Ryan Blaney in the second position in the NASCAR Cup Series playoff standings. And with that, if you finish second, you get 10 bonus playoff points that will carry with you throughout the playoffs. So it's really, really important here if Ryan can win the race. And we can go over all of those scenarios, but that's kind of where I ordered it. I don't know if that's where you feel as well. So the race to get in, the race for the win, the race for second. That's the order that I've put things in, and I want to get your take on that.
Okay, what was point number 1?
The race to get in.
The race to get in. Okay, so the race to get in, the first thing we're looking at, is we have a 25-point advantage on Martin. If you can point yourself far enough ahead of Martin before the end of the race, even before you get to the third stage, and it is possible, you don't even have to worry about what happens in the third stage. And 11 is the magic number there. 11. Any combination of points at the end of stage 1 and 2 combined, that's 11 more points than what Martin gets in those 2 stages. Ryan will then have enough points that the third stage won't even matter, and a new winner won't matter, because he will be 15th no matter what. He'll be locked into 15th. So that's the first thing.
Now, the second thing, I mean, this is more strategy-wise. It's just the race for the win, but there are implications to winning this, because you get more points, more playoff points, and just keep adding to that tally.
Yeah, that's where the board comes in. I gotta pull the board up just because of the playoff points that the guys start off with. Because the truth is right now Ryan dropped a third in the standings, and this drops his bonus points that he gets for finishing where he finishes in the standings. That if the playoffs started right now, he'd be at 2013 to start the playoffs. And the 5 car has now moved to second in the point standings. He's at 2023. So if you can flip-flop that, I believe it's like a 10-point swing where they would take 5 away from the 5 car. 5 points would be added to the 12 car if they were able to flip that. And if Ryan wins the race, that's another 5 points plus any bonus points if you can win a stage or 2, which is something to definitely gun for now. Seeing as if you win a stage and Martin doesn't point in a stage, and then you get 1 more point than Martin in the other stage, once again, you've gotten that 11 points that you needed to finish ahead of him no matter what happens.
So I think that kind of almost covers both of those points. The race for the win there, where you get an extra 5 bonus points on top of that. If he goes out there and wins this race, there's also a really good chance he's going to go ahead of Kyle Larson in the points, depending on what happens in the stages. Now, if Larson goes out and wins both stages and Ryan finishes low in the stages, and then Ryan wins the race, there's a chance Larson still comes out ahead. But
it's a 9-point difference in the overall standings right now. So he is 9 points behind the 5 car. So once again, same type of scenarios there. Enough points in the stages, good enough finish above the 5 car in all 3 things, and he can jump that 9 points no matter what. And that would be, like I said, that'd be super. Besides winning the race and getting that 5 bonus points for winning the race too. So that's something to look out for. Like I said, you're right. It's not the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal is just make the playoffs first and foremost. It's a sense of relief now that we don't have to worry about, if we do that, we don't have to worry about the new winner situation. I put together this graphic here. I'm going to put it up close to the camera there. I don't know if anybody can tell, that's a 12 car and a 19 car. And they have magnets on them because of the board over here. But the reality is that would be super if one of them magnetized themselves right before the beginning of the race and then got up behind the other one and just stuck to them the rest of the race. Because if you get the equal amount of points all race long, it doesn't matter what happens at the end. If if you guys are that close in points and you end up with a 25-point lead at the end of the race, or whatever it takes at that point, even if you both finished 32nd and 33rd, but you had the same amount of points all day long. Perfect.
And honestly, I almost feel like that's what's been happening. And I heard you mentioned what I've talked about before on this week's podcast when I was out and you and Kate took over, how I was saying, I just kind of felt like they've been really caught up in this points race the last few weeks. That's kept them off of what their normal strategy would be to win races and run up front and all that stuff, because they're really focused on what the 19 is doing and trying to stay on the same strategy as them and race around them. And if you've noticed, that's pretty much where they've been around the 19 the last few weeks, and the finishes have not really been too stellar. But in this case, we're coming down to this final cutoff race, and they might have to do that to stay alive. But it could be kind of frustrating as Blaney fans, because we've seen Ryan run up front and win at Daytona.
Here's the coolest thing down here at the bottom. I put them in there with their number of wins. Like it was before. I put it, I don't know if you see, it's a new graphic, and you see all the
nice and shiny.
All the cars, and they're ready to go. We'll be using this during the playoffs, wink wink. But 212 to the cut line. So Martin and Ryan have risen way above everybody else to begin with. The next car, I believe, that's 187 points away from Martin is the 43 car. So, everything from that 43 car to 30th in points right now needs to win the race. And if they win the race, and the points stay the way they are pretty much, Martin will end up getting bumped out. Somebody on Twitter, one of the reporters, and I retweeted it earlier too, made the comment that it would behoove Ryan and Martin to push each other to the victory. Either one of them win and the other one is in. It wouldn't matter. It wouldn't even matter which one, because it wouldn't be a new winner that's beyond the two of them. Some people got a great scenario where Ryan pushes Bubba to the win, and that would be great for, awesome. For the friends that they are, and to see a 2311 car actually get the spot that they lost to Kurt, and it'd be another Toyota, like I said, within that team and everything. That's another thing, team orders, so now the guys, we're hoping they were going to work with us to begin with. But now if you're one of the Toyota teams, are you going to work with us too? Because you don't need to see any new winners, and, you're going to help Martin out as best as you can. It's really kind of hard to do, I'm sure, because 200 miles an hour, 2 lanes of traffic, trying to figure out who's doing what.
Millimeters from each other.
Right. But when you get to the end of the race, and if there's a late restart of some sort, you're definitely going to want to pick, where you're at, who you're behind, who you have a chance, if you're going to come into a choose, and it's like, well, if I go now, I'll be behind the 19, or, will I be behind the 23? Will I be behind the 43? I don't want to be behind the 43, or, I'll hang him out to dry, do whatever I can to, keep a car like that from winning. So the races within the race this time around are incredible. They were last year. I mean, it came to the finish last year, and mind you, we were there, and Ryan didn't matter. He had won 2 races already, and we knew he was in, and But there was guys like Corey LaJoie who had a chance to do something, and this year Corey's actually outside the top 30 and he can't point his way.
So think about that though.
Yeah.
Dream scenario is Ryan wins the race and clinches his spot that way into the playoffs. Second dream scenario is Ryan pushes Bubba to the win, I think, just for headlines and their friendship. Third dream scenario is Corey LaJoie wins the race and he's already mathematically ineligible to make the playoffs because of being outside the top 30. Corey LaJoie wins the race, Ryan makes the playoffs anyway, and you kind of get, it'd be a really popular win for the sport, maybe more within the sport. I don't know that that's like a win that makes national headlines, but it'd be really cool for Corey to pick up a win like that.
He was talking on his podcast this week that they're not even worried about it. They're not going to try. They're not going to push. It's kind of understandable. He's the company he works for, they don't need to try and damage a car if they can help it, trying to do something like that. But if he's in position at the end,
he should take it. And he's been in position. He's finished top 10 in the Daytona 500.
Well, like I said,
times.
And last year at this race he was up there in that pack, so.
One other thing that I heard this week, from Ryan's former crew chief, a couple of crew chiefs ago, Jeremy Bullins, that he had from when he was a younger driver all the way up until he made the move to Penske. And he is the crew chief of the number 2 car now. In an interview this week said, and the question was asked to him, are you going to help Ryan? Are you going to help your teammates? Are you and Joey going to help to do whatever they can to get Ryan in? And he said, yeah, they always work together. And he said, but it wouldn't be that bad of a scenario for Ryan if the 2 car goes to victory lane. And he kind of chuckled because, the 2 did win the Daytona 500. So he would kind of bookend the regular season by winning the Daytona 500 and this Coke Zero 400. And Ryan still makes the playoffs in that fashion because there wouldn't be a new winner. I thought that was kind of funny. Now we've talked kind of a little bit about strategy, but I do want to get into that and how they approach this race. And we've mentioned the 19 and the 12 should maybe be together. Before this news broke, Ryan did his normal Monday interview on Sirius XM, and they asked him, are you going to do the strategy of running in the back, trying to stay out of trouble all race and just try to survive and finish, which at that point maybe wasn't going to be the best thing anyway, because there was only one spot available and who knows what could happen. Now with 2 spots, and Ryan said, no, our MO at Plate Tracks is to run up front with our teammates and control the race. And that's something you talk a lot about in several episodes ahead of these super speedways, where that's Team Penske's goal, is to control the race and run up front. I think that's what he needs to do. Absolutely. I know it's risky. It's a little bit less risky now with two spots open in the playoffs. But do you see them doing anything else besides trying to run up front and lead laps and win stages?
No, I see stage 1 playing out that way. The craziness, I don't think everybody thinks is going to be crazy, but I don't think it is. I think a lot of the teams that are trying to just win the race overall don't care what happens in stage 1 or stage 2. They want some track position. Yes. Will they do something pit strategy wise to help that? Probably. I mean, you get to the end of stage 2 and everybody pits and they're going to pit there. They'll be in there for 20 seconds, making sure they're full of gas. You know what I mean? Because stage 3, they get to that stage and they only, want to pit, and pit as short a pit stop as they can to get back on the track as quickly as possible. So that's where all the action is really going to happen. The end of the stages, they do get a little racy to begin with. But unless you're, trying to buck for that one stage point, and you're up there close enough to get your hands on it, a lot of these guys aren't going to be really worried about it much at all. I mean, it really aren't. So like you said, to get to the front, control the race, that would be great. We'll see what happens with qualifying.
I was going to say it does depend on qualifying
Saturday, because they who knows where they're going to line up, although generally when they do qualifying, as long as the weather doesn't change much between the beginning and end of qualifying, you look and see, and all the Hendrick cars are right next to each other. All the Penske cars are right next to each other. All the Gibbs cars are right next to each other. They all trim the cars out the same way. They all have the engine package set up in there the same way. And literally, because qualifying at super speedways is just, put it up there and mash it. You generally don't get too much of a difference between the cars, unless, like I said, the weather, unless there's a tailwind at one point, the sun comes out, the shade comes out, whatever it is. They're doing it at like what I think is like 5 o'clock Saturday. So
Friday actually.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry.
Qualifying is on. Yeah, it's a little bit different with the race on Saturday.
Saturday, yeah. So I'm sorry, yeah. So qualifying tomorrow at 5 o'clock. So that'll be the only difference, is if the weather affects the qualifying. The weather doesn't affect the qualifying. They should qualify real close to each other, where they should be able to get with each other pretty quickly. It'll be interesting to see how close to the front they all are. I know that certain teams trim the car out a little bit more and try to be faster for qualifying. The only problem with that is when you drop the green flag, sometimes you're a little squirrely because of it.
Like Alex Bowman, who sat on the pole at Daytona numerous times.
Yeah.
And then the handling is just not there, and they don't fare too well in the race. So let's talk about stats a little bit here. And one stat maybe to look at here, Ryan's average start at Daytona is 12.7. Earlier this season, so in the next gen car for the Daytona 500, he qualified 7th, which I guess that actually has more to do with his finish in the dual race than it did speed. But he also, I think he probably qualified fairly well. Overall stats, 14 starts at Daytona. We kind of joked about this earlier, and you said maybe this is like this for most drivers, but Ryan's kind of 50-50 here, nearly 50-50. 6 top 10s, including 4 top 5s in a victory, 6 DNFs, with the last crash actually coming in the Daytona 500 in 2021. And technically, that car did get wadded up at the end of the 2022 Daytona 500 earlier this year, but it was after he crossed the finish line. But as I just mentioned, a lot of driver stats might kind of look like that, except for Kevin Harvick. I think they might actually be worse, even though he does have a 500 victory in there. But he's crashed out several times. So as I said, it still adds to the nerves, because you never know what's going to happen. Now, if Ryan is going to crash, I don't even want to say I hope he crashes, but if it's going to happen, hopefully it's third stage after they've gained a bunch of points in stage 1 and stage 2. But you never really know what's going to happen there. One thing I didn't bring up is when it goes back to strategy. Do you think that there's going to be any strategy issues because of the different manufacturers? So Ryan's in a Ford, Martin is in a Toyota. That could maybe mess with that idea of them, hooking to each other, having a magnet that keeps them hooked up. Because I'm trying to think about what the fuel runs are like at Daytona. I'm not exactly sure, but if they do have to do a green flag pit stop, like say they want to flip a stage and the Toyotas come in, do you think maybe I don't know, man, there'd be a lot of coordinations there. If the Toyotas came in before a stage and did like all the Fords stay out to try and get Blaney points, do you think they even care? Maybe they do. I'm not sure.
That's actually a really interesting point, because if you remember last year, they got into some single file lines by manufacturer at one point to fuel. And if you do your line and you're on the inside, the other one's on the outside, and you can hold them up for a lap or two, and then you go ahead and fuel, and then they got to come a lap later. And if they're not organized when they come in, or vice versa, you're not organized when you come in. That's where it all seems to really happen or fall apart, because you need, like all the Fords, let's say, you need all those Fords to come in at the same time and make sure that they leave at the same time. Because if you're the straggler and you lose the back of the pack, you need a caution basically at that point, because you're not going to get back to them. And the Toyotas were pretty well organized last year, although Kyle Busch was having problems with Bubba. They weren't racing well together, but I'm hoping that they all come back together at some point. ultimately would be super if the Fords got their pit stop in, all got out, got organized, and then the other two groups didn't get very well organized. What we can also see is where they just all hit pit road together, which is a melee to look at. But when it's done properly and the top cars come out, the top 20 or 25 cars come out together, it's pretty cool.
It's so hectic. And I mean, whether it's Daytona or Talladega, and honestly, there's the old, which this happened over a 2-day period though. The old spin and win from Ryan Blaney at Talladega, where he spun on Sunday, the race gets rained out on Sunday. They finish the race on Monday and he goes to victory lane. So, but that's just an example of that. All those cars, even when you're only pitting with your own manufacturer, sometimes getting woed down from, going 200 miles per hour is a little bit difficult. And who knows with the next gen cars too, they might be a little bit more difficult to handle. I will tell you, Daytona is our adopted home track, being down here in Florida now. So we'll be at the race just as we were last year. I wish you guys were making that barnstorm down from Ohio to Florida to catch this race with us again, but maybe we'll catch you next week. Yeah. So we'll be there, and we're actually, for the first time, I guess last year we sat on that side. We are sitting down toward pit entrance. So we'll have a nice view of that in case that there is some chaos there, hopefully involving Toyotas and Chevys and not the Ford teams.
Right.
So
the tough part about the manufacturer part of this is a couple of your teammates and Kevin Harvick are in the playoffs.
Yep.
But you've got guys like Michael McDowell or Cole Custer, who
Eric
Almirola is another one who, they want to not only hit pit road, but they want to hit pit road, get out in front of everybody, and hopefully be the one. Like I said, in that scenario before the announcement, it was really scary because you didn't want now post announcement, you just want everything to be clean enough where Ryan doesn't get mixed up into somebody's mess. Even if he doesn't get, here's another thing, if he doesn't get any stage points, he just needs to finish in the top 10, 6th, just to make sure that Martin's not going to pass him. But the stage points are the thing. So, get to the end of the first stage, get to the end of the second stage, hopefully be up in that top 10, get some stage points, get a little more buffer, get a little more in case something happens at the end, at the end of the race. But, the scenarios of the guys who need it more than anybody else are the ones you really got to be worried about pitting and at the end of the third stage.
So if you do want to watch this race this weekend, which if you're a Ryan Blaney fan watching this episode, fan of anybody out there, the Coke Zero Sugar 400 this Saturday, August 27th at the famed Daytona International Speedway. You can catch it at 7 p.m. Eastern time on NBC and with MRN and Sirius XM NASCAR radio. We mentioned that qualifying is actually going to happen at 5 p.m. on Friday, the 26th. Now, one kind of important thing to bring up here, and this is maybe unfortunate for NASCAR fans out there, even though I think both of us are also fans of the NFL, there are multiple markets across the country where the race is not going to be shown on NBC because there is an NFL preseason game happening in that market. So I actually have a list of them provided by several of the media members. I'm actually looking at a tweet from NASCAR reporter Kelly Crandall. If you are in the Baltimore market, the NASCAR race is going to air on WBAL Me TV. They have the Commanders at Ravens on NBC. If you're in the Harrisburg market, the NASCAR race is going to air on WGAL D2 as they are playing the Commanders at Ravens as well. If you're in Phoenix, where the NASCAR championship is held, even in Phoenix, the race is going to be broadcast on KTVK AZ Family as they show the Cardinals and Titans on NBC instead. And then right here in Florida, in the Orlando Daytona Beach market, the race instead is going to be on WKCF, which is the CW18, as they play the Bucks versus the Colts on NBC. And then in the Tampa Bay market, just down I-4, the NASCAR race, the Cup Series race, will be on WTTA Great 38 as they also play the Bucks and Colts. And there's two more markets here that as soon as the NFL games are over, they're going to join the race in progress, and that's Philadelphia and Washington, D.C. So If you are in either of those markets, in any of these other markets as well, you're probably going to have to switch over to either the NBC Sports app or Peacock. Now, keep in mind, you're going to have a Peacock login for that, and you're going to have an NBC login from your cable provider or something like that to get in and watch it on the NBC Sports app as well. So again, if you're in Baltimore, Harrisburg, Phoenix, Orlando, Daytona Beach, Tampa Bay, the Tampa Bay area, Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., and you're looking to tune into the Coke Zero Sugar 400 at 7 p.m. on Saturday, you might have to flip around some channels, check out your channel guide, or switch to streaming instead. So again, to recap, Kurt Busch has waived his right to a medical waiver, so that opens up 2 positions available this Saturday at Daytona to get into the NASCAR Cup Series playoffs. Again, that's good overall for Ryan Blaney's efforts to get in, but again, we wish Kurt well in his recovery. And again, to recap, I think again, the race to get in the playoffs for Blaney fans and Ryan and the 12 team, most important. The race for the win at Daytona, which would take care of everything, I think second important. And the race for second place in the NASCAR Cup Series standings, the point standings, where Ryan sits third right now, just 9 points out of second. Chase Elliott, of course, has already wrapped up the regular season championship.
Yeah. So, as you're watching, watch the, you're watching for the end of the stages. You're watching to see where he is in relationship to the 19 secondary, where he is in relationship to the 5 car. And hopefully he's nowhere near anything bad that happens to anybody else. And, hopefully he can just go for it, get what he needs to get done. But point wise, forget about the points. As long as they get a repeat winner,
Doesn't matter.
Hey, it doesn't matter. These two can just get together, hook up, and be next to each other all night long. I'm fine with that.
All right. So good luck to Ryan Blaney, Jonathan Hassler, Josh Williams up on the roof, and the whole Team Penske number 12 team as they make their last effort here in the NASCAR Cup Series regular season cutoff race. And let's see that 12 team get in to the NASCAR Cup Series playoffs. So for my co-host, Steve Mez, I'm Adam Rogers. We'll catch you next week on the Team Blaney podcast.
Good night, Brussels. Good night, Dublin.